Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone who has joined in. Welcome to 3AI Affine EVOKE a Leadership Roundtable series. Just a brief introduction about 3AI. 3AI is India, as you know, India's largest platform for AI analytics aspirants and professionals, a confluence of 350 plus marquee proven AI analytic thought leaders, influencers, mentors from 290 plus organizations coming together to engage on the platform for different aspects ranging from multidisciplinary learnings, interactive sessions, mentorship opportunities, to name a few. 3i has conceptualized and executed path breaking events, summits, and conferences with innovative formats and session tracks. And with that in line, we have, in conjunction with Affine, the 3i Evoke Roundtables series, which is bringing together marquee AI analytic leaders talking about multiple facets on how AI is transforming the AI enterprises. Today's topic is really interesting as we look into the overall Indian scenario as India undergoes rapid AI led transformation journeys. Enterprises, technologies, consulting providers, data centers, GCCs, as I name up, startups are redefining the overall AI prowess for India in the coming few years. Through both corporates and startups, they are looking into making significant inroads in institutioning, looking into revisiting their strategy, looking into how they can quickly overcome and move to the next level of what we call digital movements in these organizations. And with that, there is a solid bedrock of AI footprint, which is acting as a foundational infrastructure to the base AI implementation. AI for organization now is not just pilots and test projects, it has gone beyond that, and organizations are specifically looking into how they can adopt AI at a larger scale. And to talk about it, we have an expert panel. Uh, we have Sanjay Thawakar, who is the corporate VP for AI Works at MaxLife. We have Dwiraj Bose, who is the senior VP for analytics at Bajaj Allianz. And we have Purnesh Gali, who is the head of analytics for Hindalco. The session is being moderated by no less than Manas Agrawal, who is the CEO of Affine. Just to give a brief introduction about Manas, Manas is an AI evangelist, a business builder, and an entrepreneur. As a CEO of Affine, Manas is responsible for promoting client-first culture and ensuring Affine's sustainable growth through driving strategic, transformative, and impact-driven AI capabilities and solutions. So, Manas, over to you. I, along with other people in the audience, are really looking forward to the session and look forward to that. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Kapil, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning to people logging in from different parts of the world. I think over a period of time that I have been also associated with 3AI, I have seen the platform gain traction. And Kapil, I think we are just a short while ago when we start saying that it is a globally recognized platform with the kind of global leadership it brings to the table, the kind of thought process it's bringing, the kind of very interesting topics 3AI is bringing for up for discussion. So big congratulations to the entire management of 3AI for really creating this platform of idea exchange and innovation. Right. So diving straight into this very interesting topic of how Indian enterprises are actually not just testing the waters. They are not just dipping their toes into the river of AI. They are actually ready to jump in and swim against the tides, with the tides, whatever it takes to really become AI enabled and AI leaders in their own right globally. And we are hopefully not just more than a couple of years ago away when we start saying that Indian enterprises have truly embraced AI in a big manner. And the kind of panel I have here that I would be throwing a few questions to, could not have really asked for a better set of leaders to discuss the questions with and get into some bit of discussions, very different points of view. Sanjay, Dwiraj, and Purnesh coming from from the capital markets to hardcore industry manufacturing to insurance. I think there's a very interesting variety of Indian enterprises, and these are large enterprises that have been there for some time, have established themselves as very, very high quality brands. And without further ado, let me in fact pose the first question to the panel. And may I request, Dwiraj, Purnesh, and Sanjay, all three to share their thoughts on this question. The first question is fairly simple. While we talk about that Indian enterprises are scaling up their AI operations or their AI, they are actually, putting their AI dream in concrete. What are some of the, functional areas, or what are some of the foundational areas that they are currently working in? What, according to them, are the three or four very interesting problem statements or problem areas they are currently struggling with? So, over to you, the panel, please, maybe starting with Viraj.
Thank you, Manas. I think first of all, thank you, 3AI. I think for inviting. I think with the opportunity, and it's always good to be back in the 3AI platform, because the kind of encouragement we see and the kind of even like it's not only we sharing our thoughts, also we learn from all the previous conversations. Every time I call, always got some or other thing that I can also take it back. So now coming to the different areas, I will take a step back. Let's try to understand why so much buzz is about the Indian enterprise, and I think most of us here are like have gone through that journey, and I think, and then one of the reason is like we can see a huge positive future as well. So essentially, see, Indian ecosystem has been helping the global world, in terms of developing different tools and technology. And what was people, the kind of objective of Indian enterprises was, initially it was like still go and do the rough sales, and from the sales it moved to a product architecture, where we saw some kind of productization. Now over the period of time, what they have realized is like, now to retain the customer, now to have the customer can have their own customer, and that's where the customer experience came up. And when it came up, and then they figure it out, like whether they have access to the ecosystem now, whatever the be it, for the AI, what we the different enablers or the components are the technologies, and the data, everything is in India. And probably being an Indian enterprise, we have probably one of the quickest way to access the skill set technology which is lying in the country, and also the use cases. Because I think what actually helped in this journey is like the very fast turnaround time in terms of getting back to a feedback loop. So which is, I think, for all the audience interest of the in the interest of all the audiences here, when we are talking about AI, one is about implementing a technology, but the larger piece is getting very faster feedback to improve it. And that has been a constant rigor, I think. And that's where I think the Indian enterprises score a huge lot, because we are here, the technology guys are here, the data guys are here, the business is right sitting next to us. If there is an issue I'm trying to make, I'm going to implement it, I'm going to get a feedback probably in the evening, next morning at worst, and I need to fix it. What helped is like, in this faster turnaround time to fix the issue, the trust of a new technology like an AI. So now, as a result of that, I think you see lot our, I think, in this esteemed panel itself, like all of us are taking a probably a center stage, a position in the boardroom. And that's where it is, as Manas was touching about, and earlier Kapil was talking about here. It's no longer a hobby to do. We are no longer talking about a POC. We are talking directly about the impact it is bringing, the differentiator it is creating. And and depending on the organizations, it is actually deciding each and every step of the organization. So of course, customer experience is one part, but very simple thing, even like, let's say somebody is in on the NBFC or the risk side, how to underwrite in a more smart way, how to get like more authentic information about the customers, how can we proactively give them more what they are looking for at that stage or that point of time. So very small things, like I think it's and I think very proudly we can say, like, I think as an Indian enterprises, uh, we probably have one of the best I won't say in all the sections, But I think in many small niches we have the products which are having better customer experience than the global products itself. Now I think just take 2 years back, thinking about the customer experience and in Indian enterprise, those were used to be two different things. Now in each and every decisions we are talking about customer experience, and of course at the back end of it, what also comes is a lot of the optimization. And if you see like the way the enterprises are working in a more smart way, leveraging whether it is like computer vision, whether it is like an NLP technology, typically lot of the huge, it's a document based, most of the enterprises are document based business. The way they have digitized their documentation, the way they have settled the claim, like for example we have certain products where you go like we have one of the first one to use the blockchain. And if you have a travel insurance from, let's say Bajaj, you go, if there is a flight delay, you don't even know that there is a delay, your amount will get credited to your bank account. Now to lead that kind of enterprise, I think often we don't talk about it, but that's probably another thing what the Indian enterprises are there. But I think big difference is like, I think the fact that now AI and analytics is sitting at the heart of the boardroom, taking all the critical decisions and taking and asking for it proactively. So I think, and in other we talk about like pull and push. It's no longer a push game where I am talking about AI kar lo, yeah, we have to do some machine learning thing. It's now probably with all of us here, we are overloaded with the demand because the business is coming to us and asking for the implementation. So I think that's where I think the fundamental part, as I was talking about on the outside side, AI is playing a huge role in terms of retaining the customer, improving the productivity, and making the business more efficient.
Uh, Hi, Dwiraj. Are you still there? Hi, Kapil. Can I request you for intervention here?
Yes, I'm just checking with NK.
Yeah, Manas, we have lost Viraj. There is some network issues there. You can continue with
Okay.
Sanjay and Purnesh.
No, of course, of course. I think Viraj touched upon very, very interesting topics where he linked the development of AI to also a development in the Indian business space, wherein we have evolved into economy or an ecosystem or a culture, socio-culture kind of environment where customer experience has become very, very important, and hence the trust that AI has built initially with POCs has established itself as a got itself a seat at the table, even in the boardroom. So, Purnesh, Sanjay, would love to hear your thoughts on, some of the areas or, how you see AI kind of transforming the enterprise.
Okay. Maybe I'll quickly. So what I think what Viraj has touched upon, right? So one interesting observation that he has made, I'll just probably build on that. He said the experience from a consumer perspective, 2 years or 3 years ago compared to 2 to 3 years ago to now, has uh, has changed dramatically, right? So the experiences are world class now. So we are in some of the experiences probably we are setting the gold standard of, right? So we are beating some of the Western counterparts as well. So to understand this phenomena, right? So at least the way I think about technology transformation or this field in general, maybe it will help for my own sanity, right? So what there's this concept called catch-up cycles. I'm sure you may be familiar with this, but it is very simple that every industry over a period of time opens up a window where the new entrants or someone who is a latecomer to that industry will get an opportunity to leapfrog the leader. And this happens primarily either due to technology or policy or people. We have seen that example multiple times, right? So, for example, in the late 2000s, a smartphone is a great example, of mobile phone, when uh, with the right technology, right? So a company was able to leapfrog a latecomer in a mobile industry, was able to leapfrog someone who is a leader in that industry. Of course, Apple is the example that I'm talking about. We are seeing that play out now in other industries when we look at it, right? The semiconductor industry as we speak. All the late entrants or the new entrants in the semiconductor industry, be it Apple or Qualcomm, all right? So they are questioning Intel's leadership for decades. So all of this is powered because technology has advancements in technology have opened up a window that is allowing them to challenge the leaders in that industry, right? So the same analogy, right? So maybe if it more practical example that that I always relate to when we speak with some of our friends and family across in the US or in the Western world, a simple thing like a UPI or an IMPS payment system. We don't realize sitting in India how amazing that infrastructure is until you go to a different country and experience that the money transfer is not so straightforward, right? The concept of PayPal is so alien to us because we never felt the need to use something like a PayPal. There's no need for a third party because the infrastructure is so uh, robust. So we did not have to go through the same cycle. So we were able to leapfrog that, right? So AI is, I believe, is one of those fundamental technology tools that is going to allow companies, communities, and countries to either leapfrog or strengthen their leadership position. It depends on, right? So whoever is going to, I believe it is not just improving operational efficiencies or anything. The companies who are going to use AI as a strategic advantage, who really understands, whether they are coming from a leadership position or whether they have to catch up with someone or leapfrog someone, right? So if someone understands and thinks about this clearly, and if they're able to apply AI to their benefit, right? So such companies would be very hard to compete with, right? So that's how that would be my submission.
And Purnesh, if you can also highlight a few areas where you, coming from a very core industry, you are seeing certain very interesting applications of AI, be it in quality or productivity improvement, augmenting the human capability, man and machine working together. Any ideas that you can throw on there, please?
Yeah, right. See, one interesting thing I think we were chatting even before is the manufacturing industry. There's 3 or 4 trends that are very large trends that are converging in the manufacturing industry, right? So one is the industrial IoT, because factories are generating extremely large data sets. How do you tap into that data? And in the future, as we are seeing some progress towards it, which is 5G, which is going to let it's still maybe from a practical standpoint, it is going to be few years away. But when it comes, you'll be able to stream data from remote locations of factories, even high quality video to wherever you want, right? The kind of applications that is going to open up is, going to be very interesting. And of course, how do you leverage AI to tap into the industrial IoT or other data sets from your factories in real time? So with this context in mind, few things that are extremely important for a manufacturing business. Maybe first and foremost, Hindalco is a commodity business, right? So understanding what factors affect the global commodity market is, if you are able to leverage AI to understand how the global commodity industry is going to look like 3 months, 6 months, 1 year down the line. Uh, is going to be extremely important, right? So now, just a word of caution here. Most people approach this thinking that I'm going to replace the existing way of understanding, or my fundamental analysis or my technical analysis. All of that will go away when I build a machine learning model. But definitely no, it is only going to be a third instrument that is going to strengthen whoever is the decision maker, right? So that's the right way to approach it. As I said, anything related to forecasting, especially related to price forecasting, or in the commodity industry, or anything related to commodity, global commodities, are extremely important. We you know it's difficult now, right? So let me qualify that, because in the last 1 year or so, we have seen dramatic changes in the entire industry. First, because of COVID and the aftermath of COVID, and the recent shortages in China, because the coal shortages in China, and how that affects the global supply chains, right? So all of those we see in news, we see an impact on the commodity prices, right? So all the way from crude or aluminum or copper, and right, so the global macroeconomic, the unemployment in the US, how is it affecting? It's a very complex supply chain. So if we are able to build even a decent model to get sense out of this, it's a great addition. Second is, of course, our supply chain is extremely complex, right? So it's a global supply chain. Get raw material, import raw material from sometimes, and for some of the plants, one country, export, process it in India. Within India, the raw material moves from different locations for further processing, and then finally export or maybe sell it to different customers, right? So there is a supply chain both from a logistics perspective and also procurement perspective. It's again an extremely important thing, right? So anything that of course, though I cannot talk specifics, right? So at a broad level, right? So anything that we are doing to optimize our logistics cost, anything that we are doing with our procurement to understand, the better absorb market shocks when there is a shortage of raw material, right? So anything like that is definitely going to help. Of course, the last and equally important is the heart of manufacturing, right? So simply put, our factories, right? So end of the day, the goal is simple for everyone. How do we make our products faster, better, cheaper, and safer, right? It's the holy grail of any manufacturing, any product, right? So now again, right, so going back to my earlier analogy of catch-up cycles, which is, see, if I'm making a product in a remote location in India, how do I compete with someone who is making a similar product, let's say in Germany? Germany is usually considered as a world class or a gold standard in manufacturing, right? Yes, traditional. We need to definitely improve our fundamental understanding of the process and get better at processes. But maybe AI, definitely deploying the right machine learning models to improve either reliability or quality or anything, will definitely play an important role.
Fantastic, fantastic. Purnesh, I think that was fantastic. And on that note, Sanjay, a quick word from you as well, please, on where you are seeing the AI applications in your kind of industry or globally in different kind of enterprises as well. And again, mainly in the Indian enterprise context, please.
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Manas. I think so. Both Dwiraj and Purnesh has touched upon on important aspects as to why we are seeing that that all the enterprises has to pick up AI and ML. So when we talk about the Indian context, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about was that when we look at the Indian consumers, when we look at India as a consumer base, we see that there are close to 500 million smartphone users in India. When we talk about the digital payments, we are seeing in billions. So I think so the last number was 40 billion or something digital transactions that is happening in. And when I look at the number of orders that are being coming through from Zomato in a year, it's again 400 million. So what we are seeing is that when we talk about these Indian consumers, they are not, they are very well connected, which means that they are quite curious. So they want to know something, they want to look at a particular product, they will quickly go to Google, search for it, compare the prices, and they are curious, they want it that at that particular point of time. The information that they want it should be in their hands. They're not going to wait and say that, okay, let me talk about this particular, let me go back home. It's not that. So it's like we have connected consumers. We are people who are they are aware, they are searching the web and getting more and more information. So when all of these customers come to you and your industry, then you can't beat a laggard in this when you have to experience and service these customers. So for example, there's a same customer who goes on Amazon, buys something, and he expects on the same day delivery happens, or a 15-minute grocery that he wants it there, or he's saying that I want a certain thing and information. But when it comes and goes for a life insurance, he will say that, okay, I will wait for a month, or I'm gonna look at, because he's the same customer, he's experiencing a very what I would say is the best in class experience, customer experience from different industries. So his expectation and his anchoring is towards that only. And when he comes to us, so what we have to do is ensure that he also gets a similar kind of customer experience, irrespective of the product we are selling, because my customer remains the same. So given in that particular context that we are seeing a younger population as well as millennials, Gen Z, and this kind of a consumer behavior that is happening in India. So to stay relevant, to stay focused, is that all Indian enterprises has to pick up and see that how we can, service to this kind of a thing. How can we become personalization? How can I ensure that the customer feels that this entire service is very customized and catered to him, keeping him in mind? Now, when we look at all of these things, and when I look at mine specifically, the life insurance industry, which is very much, it's not a transaction heavy, but it's a very different, and it's a very, I would say that we are selling a financial product where a particular person needs to understand how this particular product is beneficial for him, and he needs to understand the give and get and the certain aspects. So the idea is that how we can leverage AI/ML to ensure that he gets the best customer service. B, he understands what is the product that he's buying. Is this product more suitable for him or not? And as well as to ensure that we are able to, you know, get the best, identify the frauds that come in. So that is the, when we are talking about this entire thing, that is how we as an industry or MaxLife as an enterprise is, adopting AI/ML. We started on this particular journey. I would say we started our analytics journey way back in 2011 when we started with the entire, creating the single version of truth. We had a entire business intelligence team. Then we added the analytics team over there, and we picked up the entire use cases. But 2 years back in 2018, we carved out a very specialized unit which was called as AI Works, which is essentially working on applied side of AI. We were now given an Indian enterprise, and the kind of use cases that we had. So we said that we're going to work on seeing that how when we start applying these AI and machine learning algorithms in certain use cases, how exactly we can tweak them, how we can customize them for our solving a particular business problem. So having said that, I think the kind of use cases we see coming to life insurance is that how do we, so we have a huge seller, agents, a sales force. Typically they are the ones who are actually selling the insurance products to a particular customer. So we kind of help them in understanding who is going to be a successful seller, who is the right particular person in terms of selling a financial products, what kind of training skills that can be needs to be provided to them. So there we use a lot of models in terms of understanding the psychometry of a particular person, which all other facets he's good at, which all things require certain customization of the trainings and everything. Then you go about talking about how do we onboard risk when you're selling some of these products which are very thinly priced. So we need to understand, are we getting the right profile or not, because there are a lot of cases wherein there's a fraud comes in and it kind of comes and hits the bottom. So, and second thing is we cannot scrutinize each and every policy that is coming in. So that's where again an automated underwriting comes into picture, that what is the kind of a customer profile is coming in. Have you see, do you think it's going to be a fraud? What is the next level of action that needs to be done? So the way that we are progressing on our AI journey is that we have identified certain areas where we would want to focus on. So something like customer service, we want to ensure that during the lockdown, what we saw was when the offices were being shut down and everything, how do we digitally service a customer, because customer wants to know a lot about his policy, he wants to understand what he has bought in and so forth. So we started saying that how do we ensure that we are able to service him in a much more better manner. So we have kind of built a human in the loop kind of a system, wherein there's an algorithm which understands the emails that is being written, and we try and respond back to that particular email with the certain things. If in case the algorithm is unable to understand what the email is being written, we pass it on to a human person. So that is just one of the examples that we have done. We're trying to understand who is going to call us, what might be his need, that what is the kind of service, can we preempt that, can we do an outbound calling to him, can we link him up to a wealth manager. So we have this a particular set of managers who are actually very similar to a wealth manager in a bank who's providing these personalized services. Can we tell them that reach out to this customer because he might have a need? So all of in the background, what we are doing is we are analyzing patterns across the data that we have. We are trying to see that which models are going to help us understand what the customer's next best action is going to be, and how do we reach out to them, how do we preempt some of those things so that he can have the he can experience what we call as the best in class customer service. So that's over there. Then again, obviously in sales, we do a lot of cross-sell campaigns, understanding a customer need, So, for example, see, typically when you talk about life insurance, there are different life stages which comes in, which is you get married. That's when you think that there's a need for a particular insurance. Probably when someone has a child, then he starts thinking about his education and planning. Then probably for retirement planning comes into picture, or a long-term income that you would want to be. So the idea is to understand some of these needs and kind of personalized for a particular customer and create a certain offer which he can leverage. So like I said, that the entire consumer, the Indian consumer, we are seeing a huge shift that is happening, and they are becoming more connected, more evolved. They are become quite curious, and a lot of them want things right now. So the idea for all the Indian enterprises is that how do we, when we cater to these customers, how can we leverage the best in AI and technology? Both goes hand in on, right? The digital transformation, and we can cater to this kind of a population, and that's why the investments, and that's why we are moving away from POC stages to what we call as a full-fledged projects. We are seeing that how at the core of any digital transformation we have AI ML and built in, not just digital, what I call as transforming a physical leg into digital, but making it intelligent as well.
Fantastic, fantastic, Sanjay. I think you covered a very interesting gamut of use cases, and I'm so pleased to see a very interesting continuum happening. Whether when Dwiraj was talking about customer at the center of things, and even Purnesh talked about the fact that we are talking about customer experience, or he did not start with just the manufacturing, which is of course at the heart of it. I think that's very very interesting, and I'm sure that all the listeners are absorbing all these very interesting thoughts that you're bringing to the table. So thank you for that. Now, very quickly, talking about, while the vision is very, very beautiful and it can be achieved, what are some of the current challenges that you see Indian enterprises facing? If you can probably allude back to your own journey, or maybe, what you're seeing in the market in general. If you can just talk about a couple of quick challenges that each of you see. Again, maybe we can start with Viraj and, Purnesh and Sanjay on what challenges people or enterprise leaders should think about very consciously and try to solve them, rather than get hit by them and then try to react.
Sure, sure. First I'll just because as we were talking about, I think almost every enterprise is at some or other stage of the journey. So it's we can, in other words, we can call about like a more of an AI maturity framework. So, and the business problem and the challenges are different for different kind of enterprises. And let's take like somebody who has just started the journey. They have heard it. They are trying to figure it out how to do it. Now that there are people like who has done some POC, they are looking to scale up. Now the other ones, the matured ones, they have they have seen the benefit, and now they want not only want to scale up fast, but they want to put some I think unimaginable experience. Because I think, see, one fundamental part what AI is trying to bring here is leveraging data. It is taking intelligent decisions, and it is simplifying everything. When we are talking about customer experience, or be it like any other use cases, it is an optimization problem where it is simplifying all everything. Like for example, earlier we used to submit forms and do all those things. Now everything can we do things digitally? Can we get all the data digitized? It can read, it can learn, it can take the decision digitized. So that's how, for the based on the maturity of the of the enterprise, the problem statements are stacked like that. But now, if I try to break that problem into demand and supply, of and aside, and then probably the third part is the enabler, where we will talk about. So on the demand side, I think the right kind of demand is there. The lead examples are there. I think as I was talking earlier, the boardroom discussions are happening. Everybody wants to say like, I want at least one AI project. How can it help? I think almost all of us gets pulled from here and there from the, how can from successful. I think as a community also, and what 3i is trying to do, how can we leverage from each other's success and actually take it forward as a community. So from the demand side, I think we are much more structured now, especially I think after last 2 years with the successful use cases. And I think there On the and also like the people, I think a lot of the even like I'm sure almost all the management or almost all the people who are taking the key decisions, they have understood like how AI can play a decision. So very often you will find like many people, they are speaking the right language and more relevant context. So that also shows like the trust factor is there. So I would suggest that is like the that is working very well. I think few enterprise still needs to work out. I think it's matter of time. Probably they'll be in the game as well. I think the bigger challenge I would say is on in terms of the supply side, supply, and that's where the talent part comes in. While we are trying to make it as much as you say like the be it in terms of making things in the open source, I think a lot of organizations are also coming forward. They are releasing their data. A lot of I think even regulators and others, they are throwing up the business problems in open to get the better solutions. We know even like we know many of those examples now, the whole kagels and other things, those are still there. But I think still the institutionalize this whole thing, the whole supply side of the problem needs to be done. I think that's still I think the maturity in terms of the maturity framework that needs to be sorted. Like in the sense like because very the solutions and the success of the solutions is lying in very few individuals. Now how can we scale that? I think that's like a big challenge. And I think those people who has done the successful implementations also, now how can they do they can make it more wider and deeper in some respect. So in terms of talent, and as I was saying, like I think one of the good part about like especially India, I think coming back to again India here is like in terms of the talent, because I think naturally the bent on towards maths, towards quant is there. Like we know, like in most of our families is what for whatever reasons, if you don't study maths, if you, it doesn't matter how much you score in other things, if you have not done maths, it's not going to work fine. So I think what that helps is like this, you can see like from a lot of the other context and other things, it is coming up the lot of the talented people even at the school level. I think we do a lot of the solutioning and work, some of the solutions coming from the school level, that's quite interesting. And I think as a community, what we have done very successfully is we have broke the barrier of entry. So what is we are getting done in one enterprise, to do that, whatever ingredients are required are already available in as an open source in some shape and form. That definitely needs to get customized and to implement it further. But I think as an individual, it somebody needs to get into that passion. And I think that's where the whole, I would say, like integrating the supply part of the talent, because I think the kind of use cases are not in are unimaginable across all the enterprise, across all the value chain. So I would suggest like that is like one of the big part of it. Now the second part is also we know like AI needs a lot of training data. So that's where probably one of the weaker section of like typical Indian enterprises are not that process oriented. The whole focus shifted. It was not that data centric. It was not that, as I was talking about 2 years back, 3 years back, talking about customer experience, we never used to see. Now most of us are deciding our what we want to buy based on our customer experience instead of the price. And I think so it has come to that value. But at the essence of it, a lot of the experimentation is getting done using small data, low tenure data when the data got better. But I think lot of interesting and lot of insightful information is there in the historical data. So I think I'm sure almost all the enterprises, I think people representing here, they are working to how can we make what can how can we make those data meaningful. Because I think as a typical data scientist, I think I'm very conscious on data. We don't throw any data, I think all of us here. So even little information is good to go. But I think again this thing needs to get institutionalized, and I think that's where I think a lot of community effort and it's popping up. I think both like that's where I think to enable that, I think good part is like that for as in to enable that there are a lot of support from the technology side, from the tech side, whatever is required. And I think all those earlier things we remember, like some of us, like it is going to take few days to run those questions, run those queries, get back to the business. And that was one of the reasons like why business didn't have an Indian enterprise the faith on data analytics or AI, because it always used to take time. Now technology is, we know it's everything is like on the OpEx side. I can, it's a paper use. I can take the decision. If you want now, okay, I will give you now. You have to pay for now. If there is a benefit, incremental benefit is going to outweigh the cost, we are fine. So I think this all, it's, I think as an ecosystem is working very favorably, and that and as a technology, and even like from other, be it from the academic, government, everybody, the whole right support, right talent, a lot of people who learned and did work in the in abroad, and actually, and people have come back. They are working and helping the enterprises. So definitely those learnings has also helped, and it has fastened the whole life cycle of failures and from where it is. But still, I think, as I was saying, like I think if you ask me single 2 points, one is definitely data capture, and second is like on the talent side. These are the two imperatives we have to definitely, still we have to cover a journey there.
Fantastic, Viraj, and Purnesh and Sanjay, thoughts from your side as well, and we definitely are looking forward to many more thoughts coming from on the other questions as well. So, quick thoughts from Purnesh and Sanjay on what challenges do you think Indian enterprises need to overcome?
Yeah. Quickly, I think Dwiraj covered most of them. I would just offer two challenges that we are seeing, at least I am seeing practically. One, of course, is talent, industry-specific talent, no-brainer, right? So I don't want to reiterate it again. But building trust in the models, right? So some industries may have crossed that barrier, but some industries are definitely struggling to cross that barrier of having faith in these models, right? So especially we have seen a famous example, Zillow recently in the news for all bad reasons. That is not going to help. Because for like it or not, people only read headlines. They don't go into the details of what actually happened, whether the model really failed or something else happened in that case. They never publicly said that we are going to shut it down or anything, right? So but of course the headline is that, can we really trust the models? So one challenge, and I believe a lot of work is already happening in this space, and I foresee the work happening for the next 3-5 years, is definitely in the building trust. How do we produce models that are most trustworthy, right? So explainable AI, however we want to phrase it. So I believe we definitely have to cross that barrier. If we really have to make AI as a strategic tool. Second, I would say specifically for Indian context, and maybe more true for some of the industries like manufacturing, is I guess I'm also a culprit of this. Let me just start that by saying that maybe we need to be more open about sharing our some of the industry benchmarks, right? For example, let me just take an example of, let's say, if I'm building a churn model, all right, and because there's a finance team, right? So maybe there is a general understanding of what is a decent accuracy. So if I take a recommendation engine, or if I take, right, if I come to manufacturing, so if I'm building something to predict a product quality, right? So we need references at the industry level to benchmark against. Otherwise, right? So it's very hard to manage expectations. Everyone would want a model that is 99% accuracy. If you're doing a price forecast, I want to know the price of so and so 12 months from now with 99% accuracy, right? That's typically the business ask. But if we start sharing amongst the community some benchmarks, if you're more open about how we are approaching, not necessarily the strategic advantages or not necessarily the secret sauce, but just in terms of benchmarks, right? So that would, I believe, help the industry accelerate a lot, right? So these are the two challenges that I see.
Very interesting points, Purnesh, about the trust part of it, so that Indian enterprises start consuming AI more, and of course about the part where we can collaborate. And I think a very very good point in time to thank 3AI again for trying to build that community platform that we all so badly need, both from consumers of analytics and creators of analytics. And Sanjay, over to you on that point.
Right. I think so. Both Viraj and Purnesh has covered much, but I would just add on little bit towards that particular thing. I think so. Like Dwiraj was talking about that, enterprises are in different legs of their journey. Some are just starting off. Some are they have done POCs, they have invested, they're looking at scaling up. So, but in general, I would want to say that for any kind of an any enterprise, typically there are 3 to 4 challenges which can be bucketed. Again, some of it would be mentioned by Dwiraj and Purnesh, but one is vision. How exactly do we have a top-down sponsorship or not? Because a lot of time what happens is that if you don't have any top-down sponsorship, some of these projects fizzle out. They might, you do a POC, certain investments get stopped and kind of fizzle out. So anyone who's starting off or wants this particular thing to be, we need a top-down sponsorship. There has to be a vision, which means that it is part of the company strategy that we are going to leverage AI and the data analytics that to have a differentiated product offerings or service orientation or to cut down cost or enhance revenue. That is one. Second is, I say, use case, a laundry list of use case, as well as expectation management. Like Purnesh talked about that very specifically. I would just to add to that thing. So a lot of times when you're talking about a particular business problem on doing this thing, sometimes the expectations that is being set is that once a model comes, everything will go away, or AI ML can completely solve for it. But in reality, what happens is it's a balance. It's kind of a it takes time. It's not a binary kind of a thing that once we implement this, everything is sorted. So, for example, OCR. I'm just picking a very simplistic example. OCR comes in. People think that moment it comes in, we don't have to do data entry. But the reality depends is also on the kind of input data, right? So they have to be checks and balances in place. Or else, let's say churn. You say that, okay, this particular person will churn or these guys will not churn. There will be still a certain percentage happening in, even in those cases. So the idea, what I'm saying is that when you're talking with business folks, the set up a right expectation that it is at the end of the day probabilistic, right? These guys have a higher tendency, these guys have a lower tendency, but it's not that who we say is the guy is, let's say a bad, uh, any kind of thing. This guy will definitely churn. While majority of the folks will churn over there, but there will be certain folks who will not churn. So, or we say that these guys are the most likely to buy another policy. Still, not all will buy. Some will buy. So the idea is that making them understand that and set the right expectation. That's the second thing I would put in. The third is, again, how do we have a team in place? Do we have the right skill set? Again, in terms of skill set, we need both set of folks, people who understand business, who can do understand what the problem, understand the entire value chain, and convert it to analytics. And obviously, the other side is building these core things, having a build versus buy framework in place. A lot of services can be available. You can buy it. Do you want to customize it or not? So a build versus buy framework is definitely helps. And lastly, I would say that the data ecosystem and the engineering. Say a lot of times people want to jump into building something, but they don't really have data for it, or they have not actually captured data. So the idea is that I think so have a good understanding of the data ecosystem that is there within the enterprise. Do we have data? Are we building our assets for the future? Which means that, okay, maybe the past, the data was not there, but when I'm building a certain digitization, am I capturing the right data elements? How am I capturing? Am I having a right set of catalogs? Am I, making the entire democratization happening in or not? So some of those requires investments in this thing, because a lot of times this is where things, fail. You start off a particular project, then you suddenly run into that we don't have historical data. Now we will start capturing data. No, that's the fourth leg. And the fifth is implementation. And that's an important thing. You have built the best of the best model. You have set the right expectation, but you're unable to implement in the right form and shape, which means that, let's say I have to implement it in my digital journeys. What is the action that is going to be triggered? So, for example, I say this is a high risk case, needs to go to an underwriter. Now, there's a human in the loop. The underwriter needs to understand what are the checks and balances he needs to take, or a certain thing, what are the action. Otherwise, what will happen that irrespective of you have highlighted certain things, but action is not being taken because it gets lost in implementation. Or the question, very example like Purnesh was talking about that. Okay, there's a model which predicts the prices. Now, how aggressively are you building on that? How are you But the idea is that if there is no implementation happening and or the right set of call to action is not being taken by the business owners, most of these things will fail. Matlab, all 1, 2, 3, 4 is done, but right call to action has not happened. Right business, we have not re-engineered my process to leverage that and to take the right necessary actions. These things will face. So these are the kind of things that one needs to keep in mind, and is needed for a successful AI journey, and a continuous kind of evolving to happen.
Right. I think this is fantastic. We talked about again a very wide variety of things that need to be accomplished. Be it about building trust within the ecosystem that's going to consume AI, and sometimes demystifying, sometimes setting expectation right, sometimes giving them the art of possible could be achieved, to building the right investment in data and people, having a build versus or build plus buy or build augmented by kind of a strategy and all. And I think Sanjay, you nailed it. Mentioned that everything is done, but if you don't implement it, if you don't integrate it, finally, it's just as good as a thesis lying somewhere within your organization. I think this is fantastic. And a couple, just a quick time check. I think the discussion is going so good that I'm so sorry. I've just lost the time there. But how much more time do we have, couple at hand?
We have another 15 minutes, Manas.
Okay, fantastic. So just, gentlemen, just assuming that we'll need maybe another, 7, 8 minutes for the Q&A at the end. May I ask you guys one last question and quick 2-minute answer on from each of you? That we talked about, what are some of the interesting use cases? We talked about some of the challenges, but in parallel, if you talk about what could be right, way to build up if some Indian enterprise is still slightly low on maturity, how do they think about the baby steps or crawl, walk, run, or any other framework that you may recommend? Dwiraj, again, if we can get
Sure.
started with you just to maintain that.
Sure. I think a very important part is like you have to realize AI is nothing different. It is like essentially a culture. It's not a product. So your problem statement still remain the same. So pick up a problem statement which is like it could be which is relevant, which is data intensive, which has a lot of input data to showcase it, and then probably through that we call it MVP or something. Then after that, follow a path about kind of market or like socialize the whole success across the organization. So that's probably the very fundamental way, and I'm assuming for any novice enterprise or like who is just trying to figure it out. That's one. I just the word of caution there from all the experience, because this will require a lot of experimentation. Very often people try to pick up a problem statement which they think is going to give a more impact, but the trick probably is to pick up a problem statement which is backed by data irrespective of the impact. So I think that's what I will summarize very quickly here.
Purnesh and Sanjay.
All right. So uh, so to take reference from the book, right, Art of War. So there's this famous quote that says, "A strategy without tactic is a slow path to victory, and tactics without strategy is just noise before defeat." Right? Strategy gets very bad rap when it comes to, especially because of people think that it's maybe there's a misconception that it's just PowerPoint slides, but it's important to start with why, to answer the question why, right? So of course in operational efficiencies and are all important, but why do you want to go on this journey, right? So probably list on going back to my catch up cycles and the example, right? And to touch upon the point that Viraj mentioned earlier, every industry is different, which means that the disruptive forces in every industry is different. So a media industry versus a fintech industry versus an airline industry, right? So the disruption cycles are different. So the way you need to innovate or the way you need to leverage AI is going to be different. Start with a why. Understand, why you want to first of all start on this AI journey. Do you want to strengthen your leadership position, or do you want to leapfrog a leader, right? So understand that very clearly. It may seem very simple because that gives you the clarity for the next step, which is once you understand what you want to do. In my previous example of if you just want to make your products faster, better, safer and cheaper, right? So then you would know that okay, this is a manufacturing is an area that I want to focus. Or if you in if you're a consumer company, right, so then maybe your consumer experience. What I am trying to say is that for some companies consumer experience may be more important than the supply chain. For some companies manufacturing may be more important than right, so supply chain and other example. Understand what is more important for your company, what is the north star, that one or two things that you plan aim to achieve through AI. Once you have this clarity, rest everything becomes easier, because then you would hire the right team. Even tactical questions like how many data engineers and data scientists do I need to have, whether do I need to do this internally with, or do I need to find a partner to this, right? So all such questions, it becomes easier once you have a clarity on why you first of all want to start on this journey. Lastly, but equally importantly or more importantly, it may be obvious, but hire a team that will lead you into the future, not just copy playbooks from the past. If you copy playbooks from the past, right, it's very hard that you'll find success. Even if they are finding success in copying the playbook exactly as it is, at best you are similar to your competition, right? So at best, that's the best case scenario. You're never going to do anything beyond that. So understand, don't be of course I can go on and on. This is a topic passionate to me. Don't be swayed away by all. For example, Google publishes a research paper on AI. Google says that I'm processing millions of events every second, or Facebook says that. And don't be swayed away by the internet scale businesses. Your business may be different. Fundamentally understand what your business is, what your business needs, where you're starting from. Are you starting from a position of strength, or are you a new entrant or a latecomer? And then come up with your AI strategy. Once you have that strategy, tactics, of course, we have talked about until now, hiring the right talent and making sure the implementations I'll not touch upon. That's what I would offer.
Adding to what Purnesh and Dwiraj has already spoken about, I think so important thing like start small, pick up a use case which is linked to a KPI, like Purnesh talked about why exactly you want to do it, but also a business metric and a business KPI. Look for a sponsor who's really into this particular thing, because if you don't have a business KPI from to is never actually clear, and then it kind of it becomes difficult for getting investments. Hire, you can get it to someone, you can either get a partner to do it, or if you're hiring a team, I think so again, adding to what Purnesh said, that hire the right set of folks and complementary skill sets to hire in, which means that if you're hiring data engineer, data scientist, we really need to think also from a particular person who understands business, because a lot of times what happens is that you let these folks interact with business people, and they might be on one side a very much a technical kind of a thought process, which is like, this is how my model I have built, these are the metrics that I've looked at it, but how do you convert that into the business? How do you understand, convert that into what is the KPI that we are making a move, and how that transition is going to happen? So having a right set of folks who understands business as well as data science as well as engineering is an important part. Now, like I said, those five pillars: vision, linked to KPI, getting the right expectation, all of these five things, you will have to make, investments or getting started. And eventually you will be there. But I think so. One of the important point I also want to add is picking to what Purnesh also spoke about from there itself, to add on to that when you are building this particular thing and you hire a certain set of team, think about a sustainability and how we are gonna be, are we building the team for the future or not? Which means that there are certain skill sets that are quite relevant in the past, which might help me get to a certain level. But the idea is also that how do I have a particular team which is looking into the future, and at the same time putting a certain time and effort towards saying that maybe these are the five things which are relevant tomorrow or day after tomorrow, where we need to focus on. So the idea is that even you build up a certain team, how do you make it sustainable? How do you make it that they are thinking about the future, how they are coming up with a newer and newer thought process. What is our point of view about the newer technologies, emerging things that is there, and how that is going to disrupt my industry, or that is going to help me solve a particular thing. So a lot of times we get really bogged down by, I've seen teams getting bogged down by this is the data, these are the limitations that we have. But there are very few folks who are thinking about, okay, these are my limitations today, but tomorrow these might not be the limitation. Can I start building for the future? What are the right set of data partnerships that we can do? What are the things which we are not capturing? How we should be capturing? These are the certain things that we need to do. So the idea is that have within your team certain set of folks who's thinking about tomorrow. How can I solve which is my today's problem by laying out the pipelines, laying out the certain underlying factors which will help me solve those problems? Because like everything comes back to data. The idea is that are we capturing enough data, or are we working in that direction or not? So these are my, I would say that these are some of the things that one should be doing in terms to get started.
Fantastic. I think, again, this is a very interesting range of, how to get started, how to build on top of that, tidbits that we have gotten from all three of you. We have got multiple questions from the viewers. Difficult to really pick out, some of them, but just, Sanjay, if you can continue on that last part you talked about the data. If each of you can just take 2 minutes to quickly talk about how to think about your right data strategy, whether it's a quality, trustworthiness, connectedness, whichever aspects you can really highlight about. How does an enterprise think about data as the fundamental building block?
Yeah, and Manis, sorry, just to interrupt, we have just like 4 minutes, so if people can make it quick, that will be helpful.
Okay.
Oh, sure. So Sanjay, starting with you maybe, and then quickly, comments from Purnesh and Dwiraj.
Yeah. So, okay, I will just, quickly summarize, and probably 2 lines would be the same. So what we did was that, we looked at, typically what happens is that there's a lot of data being generated and it's being kept in silos. So there are certain systems where we might not have. One of the thought process that we had was that we started assigning values to a particular data, and we started linking it back to a particular use case. So for example, if I just say fraud detection as one of my use cases, I said that what all information that I require for ensuring that this fraud we can detect, which means, let's say there may be certain structured data, there might be unstructured data relating to the photographs, the photo of a particular applicant, or certain proofs he is giving in. So we say that, to solve a particular A problem statement, let us just bring all of these, data to a particular place where we can actually, someone can, consume it, which means that he is not bounded by the siloed part and he has to rely on going to different teams. The idea was that we linked all our data, structured, unstructured, that we are coming in, and linked it back to typically a use case or a process, which means that when I say process, the life cycle. So when we say life cycle, which means is that we get certain applications, it gets converted into a policy, then there's a servicing happening, and we say that, okay, if we have to create a customer 360, ABC things has to be coming in place and build on that. So the idea is assign a certain value, assign a certain things that this entirety needs to do it, and bring it to a particular place. Like we invested in a lot of, while earlier we did EDW and single version of truth. Now this time we are investing in building up an entire lake, a data lake, where we have, bringing all of these data elements, which are the AI team as well as the data team can work on. So the idea we have taken is that rather than bringing in, because if I start thinking and let me bring all, it becomes humongous. Go use case by use case.
I think that's very interesting. Go use case by use case. Sanjay, so sorry if I'm kind of hearing this interesting, but Purnesh, Dwiraj, just last closing comments on the data strategy. This itself is a topic which can require an hour, but quick comments from you both, please.
Okay, so I'll just quickly summarize that data, of course, from a manufacturing perspective, right? So we generate a lot of data from our factories with the industrial IoT systems on one side and the ERP systems on one side. Going back to my earlier point, fundamentally understand how the industry is different, right? So manufacturing is a very interesting scenario that on one side, there is an extremely small data set on the manufacturing side because number of products, number of customers are extremely less. on the factory side and the actual manufacture factory side, the data sets are extremely large, right? One, of course, building on what Sanjay has said, one metric that I track internally and we are driving towards is analytics ready data sets, right? So what do I mean by that is, after anyone in the organization had thought about solving a problem, building any model, from that time to the time the person is starting to build the model, what is the lead time? How much time is a person spending? So because there is the entire aspect of identifying the data set, integrating the data set, the data quality, cleansing it, and if you get 100% data, hardly will end up using 20 to 30% of the data, right? So this 20-30% is what we call analytics ready data set. Can we automate the entire process and provide access to this analytics ready data sets to everyone in the organization? So my lead time from 3 months to 2 months to weeks to it will become a matter of days, right? This is how at least we are not there, of course, right? So but this is the goal that we are somewhere, but yes, we want to be in a state where anyone can do it at the flip of a button, provided all approvals are there.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Dwiraj, the closing comments from you, please.
Yeah, so I think Sanjay and Purnesh has already covered. So what I think, if successful AI strategy requires a more successful data strategy, and I think almost all the points have Sanjay and Purnesh has covered here. But important part is, like, when all of us are thinking about the customer centric strategy, that needs to get converted into a data centric strategy, because that's how we have to think about, like, even. And I think, as a final comment, I would suggest, just in the interest of time, please don't throw away data. Even no information is a good information, and often we struggle whole life to figure out, like, this doesn't have any impact. So that's what I will end here.
Very, very good closing comment, Dwiraj. True data scientist at heart. Don't throw away any data. Don't throw away any data. I think this has been a fantastic 1.5 hours, or 1 hour 15 minutes. 3AI, thanks a lot once again for bringing a fantastic panel. Very, very interesting points talked about. How we get started. I'm very sure that we are looking at it very, very optimistically. The Indian enterprises are not going to just match or catch up with their global counterparts, but they will start leading the way. They will start becoming aspirational for rest of the global enterprises. So on that note, big thank you to AI, big thank you to my fellow panelists, and big thank you to all the viewers who have attended this show. I'm very sure that you would have carried along a lot of different tidbits on how you can take your enterprise to being an AI leader in your space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.